So I'm really happy to be here today and sharing the very positive story of forestry from Baker to Bay. You'll discover that forestry really is already providing sustainable certainty in these uncertain times. And our family has been part of that story before Washington became a state, when my great-grandfather, shown up on the slide here, great-grandpa Gust, immigrated as a young man from Sweden up to the South Pass Road and homesteaded there. And most of the original homestead is still growing trees and surrounding properties that we purchased over the years. So even though the forestry sector has really gone through many changes, it still remains an important part of Whatcom County's economy. I think one of the reasons Whatcom County is such a special place is its forest from Baker to Bay. And you know the county, it's not just the area east of the town of Glacier, all the way to the crest of the Cascades beyond Ross Lake that's covered with trees, or even that area east of Deming that's our working forest. But clear all the way to Bellingham Bay, we've got a lot of trees in our rural developed areas, around our farmlands, around the Nooksack River. I mean, this county, if you get on a high hill, or better, maybe Google Earth, and we're covered with trees in Whatcom County here. About 2/3 of the county's area is federally controlled, North Cascades National Park, several wilderness areas, and then also the Forest Service lands that are set aside for watershed, wildlife, and scenic values. And most of these changes came in the 70s and the 80s, and then especially major change in 1994 with the Northwest Forest Plan approved by President Clinton. And the plan's objective was to conserve and restore old-growth habitats for spotted owls and other species. And this plan effectively eliminated timber harvesting on federal lands here in Whatcom County, and causing really a major jolt to forest workers in the timber industry here. This loss of Forest Service revenue also still impacts our county, our school budgets, and our rural communities. Whatcom County still has a sizable area of working forests that's managed by the Department of Natural Resources. There's several industrial landowners, and then a lot of small forest landowners like our family. Private forest landowners have worked under forest practice rules since 1974. The rules have really changed and tightened over the years. These forest practice rules came out of intense negotiations between the stakeholders, including small and large private landowners, the tribes, environmental groups, and state agencies. And the results were a commitment to statewide salmon recovery, restoration of related riparian ecosystems, and a necessity for tribal environment and involvement in all phases of forest management and rulemaking. The law also provided Endangered Species and Clean Water Act assurances, and which in turn provides some regulatory stability for forest landowners in the timber industry. The rules required large uncut buffers along all fish streams and a lot of their perennial streams. Some of the estimates are about 1/3 of the working forest land base have been set aside for these environmental protections. There was also a requirement for road maintenance and abandonment plans to be implemented by landowners, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. This combination of changes to minimal management on federal lands and some of the strictest forest practice rules in the country on the working forest lands has really forced changes in the timber industry here in the county. I used to work for the Georgia Pacific, which had a lot of timberlands in Whatcom County. And, those lands were sold, and then the pulp mill closed down. In the last 25 years, that GP Industrial Lands, it's changed ownerships 4 to 5 times. And then after the larger logs from the federal lands were no longer available, the few remaining mills have really retooled to handle the smaller second and third growth forest logs. And we've seen family companies, one in particular from California was the Sierra Pacific Industries, that has moved to Washington and made huge investments in land and several high production dimension sawmills. They came to Washington looking for a stable timber supply and regulatory certainty. And then I worked for also Great Western Lumber over in Everson, and they've installed a lot of modern, more efficient computerized equipment over the years to stay competitive and utilize the logs from small private owners and trust lands. You know, logging has really made huge changes over the year also. We're seeing really new mechanized harvesting equipment that has less impact on the land and improved safety for workers. Well, so to survive all of this, the timber industry really had to make some changes, but they are still really a critical part of Whatcom County's economy. Industry changes and forest practice rules have impacted small forest landowners like our family. You know, a permit is required from DNR to harvest any trees on your property. Road maintenance and abandonment plans, part of the Forest and Fish law, gave private landowners and the state trust lands 15 years to fix culverts and roads that may cause fish passage problems and also silt into streams. And this work was done by landowners at their own expense. The only exception, there was some cost-sharing programs for small landowners, but a lot of those remain underfunded. On our tree farm, we did a complete road maintenance and abandonment plan at the beginning, and then we've replaced undersized culverts, developed several rock sources to provide better surfacing on our roads. We've took out an old log stringer bridge and replaced it with a 42-foot steel and concrete bridge. We built a new bypass road that so we can minimize travel on a road that was parallel to a stream, and then also put lots of catch basins on our roads to catch the water from the roads before it, and to let the silt settle out before it goes into the streams. So all of this significant investment to assure clean water and improve fish habitat was done at our own expense, and there was no government grants. We paid for this by cutting some of our trees to pay for these public benefits. So with all these challenges over the years, where are we today? Well, we didn't give up. We didn't sell our land. We didn't convert our land. We continue to grow trees sustainably. And in our case, certified under the high standards of the American Tree Farm System for producing certified wood products on our sustainably managed forest. So what does that mean? Well, it means this. On our tree farm, we provide very diverse habitats for all species of wildlife, or most of the species of wildlife and plants. Our trees clean the air, sequestering carbon dioxide, storing them in the trees, the soil, and the products that are made out of our trees, the wood products made out of our trees. Our working forests provide very good recreation opportunities, and another example of a private forest providing public recreation would be Galbraith Mountain. A lot of you are familiar with Galbraith Mountain. There's a working forest that's providing those kind of activities. We provide sustainably grown wood products that are renewable, recyclable, and reusable. And even though locally grown wood complies with most protective environmental standards and rules in the world, consumers still willingly purchase imported wood and do not adhere to buy local like we do with some of our other products. And lastly, we provide clean water, protecting our watersheds better than any other land use. So managing a forest, you know, whether it's large or small, really takes a lot of work. I mean, it's just not stick a tree in the ground, sit around your rocker, watch it grow for 50 years. Quite to the contrary. I mean, the work really begins when you start planting that new forest. You know, the first 5 years or so takes a lot of work taking care of the competing vegetation, and you get your trees growing really well, and then you need to space them to keep them healthy and vigorous. And at least with tree farming, it's not like with the farmers where we have to take care of the cows every day or the farm animals every day. We don't have to do that, but it is a lot of work, takes a lot of planning to really best utilize the land and meet your objectives. So in closing, the one thing I really can't emphasize enough is the importance for Whatcom County to maintain a significant working forest land base and timber industry infrastructure if you really want us to continue growing new, healthy forest. So one of my impressions is that the forest industry, even though it was one of the first ones in the county, it's still probably one of the most misunderstood. So, I mean, I guess what I'm asking is try to appreciate the investments that forest landowners are making to keep our watersheds healthy. You know, instead of discouraging remarks, maybe letters to the editors or blogs or Facebook posts about concerns about somebody harvesting their trees, consider thanking tree farmers and loggers for the hard work they're doing to really keep Whatcom County green. And really, I'm an optimistic person in heart, and I really have faith in my family to carry on our tree farming legacy, and there's a good example right there. So I stand before you today, like most other tree farmers, willing to invest the money, physical energy, and time to plant new trees each spring, not because of the regulation and not even expecting to see a personal financial return. I mean, for us, growing trees for the future generations just comes naturally. So thank you very much. Henry is the one that did this to me to get me here today.
Hey, I'm going to ask you, Tom, to take a little commercial for the timber tour. Tell us a little bit about it and make how people can be connected with that. That's one of the best educational opportunities we have in this county.
Well, I should get my friend up here, Dick Whitmore. So Dick Whitmore and myself, it was back 34 years ago, kind of during the timber wars that Jim was familiar with. And there was at that time, some of the women in timber started doing some lobbying. And so they got together with some of the people at GP and then with Dick, and we started this tour every year where we take, it's the same weekend as the Deming Log Show. Deming Log Show is the second full weekend in June. We do it at that Friday and take 2 busloads of people up in the woods to actually see these logging and forest practice and what we do every year. And that's been just a huge, effective way to explain. I mean, I can sit here and talk to you and, most of it you're not understanding, but if I can take you out, Dick can take you out, show you the dirt, the trees, what we're doing, showing the good and the bad, it really makes a lot of sense. So thanks for the opportunity to plug that. But that's one of the things we're doing with the trees, with the woods tour, with cooperation with the state DNR. Several of them are right here that have helped us with that. Forest Service, all the different foresters get involved, so that's a positive thing.
So this is Jim Waldo again. I just wanted to add a couple of comments. When I got involved in the forestry issues, I had a meeting with the major timber companies and the small landowners,
Right.
and Nels Hansen and others.
Yep.
And I said, why are you guys going to be the mastodons of Washington State? Powerful, strong, important, and you're on the way to extinction. So you either need to change or die. And it's fair to say that wasn't my most popular moment with folks in the forestry industry. But you know what? They're back to what I talked about earlier. Their leadership said, we are going to change and survive. And I want to just tell you something about the Forest and Fish Agreement. I mentioned the culverts, putting the roads to bed. This is the largest, most successful non-point source program in the United States. There is nothing that comes close to it. Over millions of acres. And much of it, as he had to say, at the expense of the people that own the land. No government grants, no special treatment. But I want to also talk about relationships. During the crash, DNR and the private forest landowners all of a sudden had no market. You want to know who came to me and asked if we could figure out a way to get an extension on that? 3 tribal leaders. 3 tribal leaders who came and said, we want these people in business. Help us figure out a way to do that. The relationships matter and the actions matter. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.